Showing Up For You is a space we want to use to talk about things that might not have been discussed in your household, your upbringing, or everyday surroundings. I'm Shon, and I'm here with my niece Jasmine, and we want to show up for you. You ready for this?
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Showing Up For You. This is Jasmine.
And this is Shon.
And today we decided that we're going to talk about self-sabotage. I brought this topic to our attention because I feel like I self-sabotage often. And I thought that it's just something that we should have a conversation about. How are you feeling about it?
I feel good. It's an important topic, and I think it's very relative. I think everyone can relate to it.
Yeah, definitely. Before we prepared for this episode, I did a little research. I'm like, what does self-sabotage mean in the world? What do people think about it? And so this is what Webster and the internet has to say about it. So I found two definitions. Mm-hmm. One from Healthline. It defines self-sabotage. It refers to behaviors or thought patterns that hold you back from doing what you want to do. Mm. And then another from psychologytoday.com says its behavior is said to be self-sabotaging when it creates problems in daily life and interferes with long-standing goals. So, Auntie, I wanted to know, what does self-sabotage look like to you and how do you define it?
Yeah, and I actually like that first definition of like the behaviors holding back. I feel like a better you. But for me, it looks like somewhere along the line, I let insecurity or outside judgment win. Like I allowed negativity, and like I allowed negativity to enter self-talk, right? Like that's what I think it looks like for me. Like there had to have been a moment where negativity like won my like motivational speeches to myself.
Yeah.
So that's what it looks like for me. What about you?
Wow, that's so good. For me, self-sabotage looks like self-betrayal.
Wow.
It's everything that's going against you, really. And like my biggest thing is like it's disconnecting from yourself and your needs. So in a way, similarly, but it's negative things that are surrounding yourself, doing things that aren't beneficial for your life, aren't catering to your needs, like it not in a selfish way, where it's like it's all about me and I'm the end all be all, but it's like not putting yourself as a priority. So you do all the things that are like completely opposite of what you actually need.
Oh, that's hard.
Yeah.
I was reading somewhere that like we do things to sabotage our success because we either don't feel like we have time for it or we feel like we don't deserve it. And so when you're talking about doing things like against, like, I guess like your better self or something, I see it as I'm doing, like you said, like harm against yourself. And like it's almost like you're saying like you're attacking yourself, right? And I've never looked at it like that. It's like self against self, like we're fighting internally.
Yeah.
Is that?
Absolutely. And it's one of those things because I think that when you say that out loud, it seems really aggressive, but it's really not. Like I think it's really sly. Like it can be really sly. When you're fighting yourself, it could just simply being like, I said yes to something that I probably should have said no to. It doesn't seem like a big deal in the moment. You're like, yeah, it's fine. Like I just said yes. And then long term, you're like, what did I just get myself into?
Right.
You're fighting yourself. And
it's like all for what? Like you said yes for what? To be something for someone else when you're like neglecting yourself.
Yeah.
For what?
Like there's just no point. There really is just no point. And I think, more often than not, that's, at least for me personally, I find myself in those situations so often where it's like, I want to be the yes woman, or I want to please my surroundings, or, make certain decisions that are beneficial to the whole that entirely neglects entirely neglects myself. And it's a horrible feeling.
Yeah.
In the long term. It's
comforting in the meantime. Don't, you know what I mean? Because when we do it, we think it's fine. We think we're saving ourselves from something. You know what I mean? You ever been in a situation where you're like, I'm saving myself. I'm preventing hurt. I'm avoiding being in a situation that will later, bite me in the butt. Like we think that we're saving ourselves, right? So it feels fine. Later, you're like, that sucked.
It just comes back and it bites you in the butt. It's like you make a justification in the beginning. You're like, I'm settled with this. I know it's the right thing to do. Right thing to do, but it's not actually the right thing to do.
It's not at all the right thing to do.
Yeah.
It's not. And earlier you were talking about, just in your definition that I really liked about behaviors, like stopping the good that you want to do. And it's almost like, kind of like you're just saying behaviors against you. But what are those behaviors? Like, what are those behaviors? What do they look like? And how do we stop them? Like, what do we do, or what do you do to stop those habits or behaviors?
Yeah. For me, I would say when I was younger, I didn't have the self-awareness to know how my behaviors were impacting me. And so when I was younger, I still do it to this day from time to time, but I have more self-awareness to recognize like I made that decision, right? But when I was younger, my mom, she saw that if something didn't go my way, or something that I strive to accomplish or whatever, if it didn't go my way or how the outcome that I wanted, I would beat myself up about it. I would put all the blame on me, all of, this is my fault, this is my fault, this is my fault. And she pointed that out to me when I was younger, that behavior, that pattern that I had, and vocalized like, if you continue to have this kind of behavior for yourself and put yourself in this kind of position, it's going to negatively impact you in the long run. Because ultimately, she didn't say this verbatim, but like, the older that you get, the harder life gets, the more challenges that come, the more adversity, that's faced. And so she was able to point that out, that behavior out in me at a really young age. But
wow.
So I'm super grateful for that. And I don't think that's necessarily everybody's, journey or something that, they have somebody to speak into their life with. But having that also created a self-awareness that I knew I needed to develop later on in my life. And so for me to overcome, or point out like what are moments that I'm self-sabotaging myself, I have to have the self-awareness of how do I respond to certain things in my life. I'm not necessarily a perfectionist, but I hold myself to really high standards. And so I know when I'm disconnected from myself, when I'm resisting something, when I'm resisting, say that there's something really good in my life, or I have, an opportunity. I've had the opportunity to have like a super awesome job, and I almost didn't take it because I felt like I did not deserve it. So in my mind, I convinced myself like, I don't know why they'd want you, and it's like, for what? Why is it you worked hard? It's like when you really like lay out all the small details, you're the perfect candidate for something. Right. But it's, because we get comfortable in certain spaces that we just end up being like, well, let me go back to that comfort. I'm going to fall back there. So it's, for me, it really is just a lot of self-awareness to know of like, what are my triggers when I feel like I'm going to potentially sabotage a situation for myself.
Wow. Oh, that's good. That's good. Man, I think for me, like when we talk about change or like, different behaviors, I used to have the attitude of like, at least. It's like this at least theory, right? So while I'm self-sabotaging, I'd be like, well, at least I don't this, or it's almost like, at least it's not as bad as it could be. And that's where I drew my comfort in my behavior. So like, you're talking about talking yourself out of a job, or talking yourself out of, I don't know, a new goal or a new habit, I would be comfortable saying, at least it's not as bad as it could be. And I would rest there.
Wow.
Right. And that felt comfortable in the moment, but then it was like, I could have started and finished by now. You know what I mean? And so I had to get rid of that. Secondly, I feel like when it comes to me asking myself, how are you changing this? How are you fixing this behavioral issue? Because it is an issue. Like, you know, like we just talked about, it's an attack on yourself. And if I'm me and I know me better than anybody else, like, why would I do that to me? It's not nice. But be that change. You know what I mean? And what does that look like for me? It's like starting small and not overstimulating what that might look like, because then I'm intimidated, right? It's almost like you're walking yourself into intimidation or defeat by making like these huge changes. So I look at it like, I love working out, but there are people that don't. I love running. There are people that don't. I could go out and run, 10 miles a day and be perfectly fine. If you talk to somebody that does not run or does not like running, and they say, I really want to start running, it would not be smart for them to go run long distances every day of the week, because a few things would happen. At the end of the week, they would say, this is some bull and I'm never doing this again. Or they would convince themselves, I've done enough. Let me take a break. And that break would essentially be something else. Or they would be like, this is too much, because they loaded so much on themselves. They now see this running as like this intimidating thing, when you probably should have said, okay, once a day, I'm going to walk for a mile, and maybe that last 30 seconds, I'm going to sprint it out. Like you know what I mean? There's a modification that we can allow ourselves that still means change. But I think that we feel like we have to jump right into things. And then that's self-sabotage. That's literally like self-sabotage. So when I look at change, is okay, what are the small changes? Because those big changes are going to intimidate me and redirect me back to that comfort level that said, you know what, it could be worse. I'm fine where I am. And so when I think about trying that new thing, when I think about applying for that new job, like you said, when I think about attempting that new goal, don't go 100% hard on it, because that's not your normal.
It's
going to freak you out.
Right. It's going headfirst in a kiddie pool.
It's really, it's silly, right? And it's going to intimidate you later. And it's going to ruin that whole thing for you. It's going to ruin a job experience for you. It's going to ruin a new relationship for you. It's going to ruin a new habit or a new goal for you. So start small. And those are like, that's what I have to remember when I'm thinking about like, how do I avoid unintentionally self-sabotaging myself? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the small steps, but you also had said a little bit earlier, like, I could have started and been finished by now.
Absolutely.
Like, how many times have we missed that so much? And like, behavior can change, it can be corrected, you can pivot, you can make change. And so why do you think that we're just so afraid to change or step into the fullness of what our lives could potentially look like?
I think a few things. I think that maybe we didn't see it growing up, or we didn't see it, or we did see it, but it was rejected or judged. So maybe we saw it and we were like, wow, that person in my family or that person in my life is doing everything they want to do. And maybe everybody else, and this isn't everybody's reason, this is my guess and my experience. Maybe you saw that person like do everything, and then you say, this looks great. And you see the people around them judging or making them feel a certain type of way for being their full self, right? You have people that really, really want to be artists and their family wanted them to be a lawyer. Or you have people that really, you have women that want to have full careers, but their family's like, why don't you sit down and have a child? You know what I mean? So there's so many things that you see, there's so many avenues where we see people being the best of themselves, but then we see the aftermath. Then we see what their surrounding does. So that's intimidating, right? Like, because you're like, so this is what I get for being me? That's weird. Or you didn't see it. maybe you know, and it's not a problem at all, but it's, you know, maybe we lived a life where we were seeing people not fully tap into who they were. You know what I mean? Maybe we were seeing people like, hey, go to work, come home, day to day. That's fine. No extra, chill out, go to bed. Right.
Right.
And so there's not really a desire to go above and beyond, because like, for what? You know what I mean? There's a lot of people that live comfortably where they are and they're like, I'm fine. And I think that's actually perfectly fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everybody is different, but those are two reasons I think I've experienced myself, because when I look at it, it's like the good and bad news is like self-sabotage is a you thing.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It can only be done by you, so you can only stop it. But it's still important to reference why we did it and where it came from and what we saw possibly growing up or possibly in our atmosphere now to do it. So when you ask, like, you know, why we might be intimidated or afraid, I'm looking at my surroundings. I'm looking at what I see day in and day out.
Yeah.
I'm also looking at TV and what it looks like to stand up for what you believe in and protest and essentially just want to be treated, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
a certain way. And now this, you know what I mean? And so it's intimidating. It's intimidating.
Yeah.
What about you?
Ooh, all of that, so great. And I relate to a lot of it, especially within, you know, your immediate circle or your immediate surrounding. Like, that is definitely what has impacted me personally. You know, I don't know where a lot of, you know, I would say I'm a goal-oriented person, and sometimes I've been in settings to where I feel like I have to make myself small.
Wow.
To be comfortable. Not for me to be comfortable, but for others to be comfortable while I'm in that space with them. And that sucks. Like, we shouldn't have to do that. We shouldn't have to, you know, sabotage who we are in a space just to make like others feel better, you know, about themselves. But, you know, I've often found myself like doing that because it was like, oh, it's too much. It's just too much. But that's just because my story looks different. But that doesn't mean that, you know, we should try to make others comfortable around ourselves or make ourselves smaller, because like, then you go home and you're sad or you're upset or you're frustrated. You have all of these feelings towards others when actually it's only because of you. Like, you created that in your life. So it's like, if you could sit with yourself and be like, you know what, I have a confidence, or I am okay that my story looks different, you know, and, you know, I would say that my age and even my peers, I'm in a lot of conversations where they're so heavily impacted by social media, right? And so it's like, what are people doing? What's on their Instagram story? What are they posting on Twitter? I have a lot of friends who own businesses. And so, you know, so many people are starting businesses and starting these new things, but what am I doing? And it's just like stress, coming and coming and coming. And it's like, it's okay to want to work a 9-to-5 job.
It is.
It's okay for you to be a doctor and your best friend wants to be a waitress, whatever that may look like. And so I think at the end of the day, like, we have to define what fullness in our lives mean, because it's about us. It's about our wants. It's about our needs. It's about the things that we want. And so I think this is always like an ever evolving conversation, because I think for me, what my fullness looks like at 25 is going to look different at 30. Absolutely.
It can be intimidating at any age. You know what I mean? You could very well, and I'll share this. I was not imagining that I'd be a mom. There, I said it.
Wow.
I wasn't, because I was very much into my career, and obviously God had different plans, and I'm super thankful. But when I was, 2021, I had a whole different method going on, and you couldn't tell me anything. Now I'm 34, and like, the things that are happening now were not in my 5-year plan. You get what I'm saying? Like they weren't on my vision board. Right. So you're, you know, like you said, like if there's seasons of fullness of what does this look like now? And, I think we were talking about this in another episode, like comparison is the enemy. Like comparison is the thief of joy. Right. And it's like, we're easily intimidated by comparison. We're easily like affected by comparison. We're jealous by, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So many things are rooted in comparison when really, if we like had blinders on us, we'd run our race a whole lot differently. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I look at it like, I remember, so this is probably just mid distance and long distance stuff, but I remember like going through training and running and my coach saying, keep your eyes on the road and you need to listen for the runner behind you. You need to know what it sounds like for somebody to be right up on you. And I, to this day, I will like be staring straight ahead, but I'm like, I know. My husband thinks I'm crazy, but like, I know, but it's a different race when I might hear you, but I'm going.
Right.
Rather than I'm looking at, well, Lane is she in? And what is she doing? And how far back is, it's a different race. I'm not fully giving it my all.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you talk about fullness in different seasons, or I think you said just at different ages, maybe, I could totally attest to that. I can't stress that enough, you know,
because when we're looking side to side, you are slowing yourself down so much, so significantly.
Or you're going to run into something.
Okay. Right. And then what? Crash, burn, pivot. Yeah. And that's honestly for me, how I see that, like that scares me.
Yeah.
And maybe I just take it too seriously and I'm heavily weight, you know, or whatever. But like, I don't want to be in a position to, you know, constantly be looking side to side because I don't know, I just hit my heart in a different place. Like we could have started and we could have finished by now, and you could have been on to the next thing that you want to accomplish, want to get done. You know, even relationally, when you're looking at so-and-so or talking about relationship goals and all the things, like, what are you doing? That is not benefiting you whatsoever.
You don't know what happens behind those Instagram posts.
Not a single thing. And then TMZ comes out and it tells you. I'm just kidding.
Stop there.
Just kidding.
You know what? As we're talking about comparison, like I start to think about other ways of self-sabotage. Like I feel like, and I could be wrong, I feel like there's like you can self-sabotage by failing to follow through, like creating goals and then not finishing them. You know what I mean? Like I feel like sometimes it's enough to just say that you're going to do it, right? Like I tease my husband because like we got the Peloton and I love it. Yeah. And so I'm on it. But he's like, no, I'm going to get on it. And I think, what if it's enough for us to just say we're going to get on it and not actually follow through and get on it? Yeah. But it's the example that I was like thinking, like, you know, it's enough. Sometimes it's enough to say, I bought the bike and I'm going to get on it. Yeah. But then we're self-sabotaging by not following through, by not actually doing what we said. And some people are comfortable with that. And some people are like, hey, I've been really meaning to. And then it's like the question of like, but how are we making time to do that when we talk about like behaviors and how to change that? But yeah, like I think that self-sabotage can be failing to follow through. What do you think about that?
I feel attacked. That's what I feel about that. No, that's real. I think that we make goals or we say things that we want to do, or, you know, there's a change that I want to happen in my life, yet we get so comfortable saying it, but we make a new thing to divert from the old thing because we don't want to face it. We don't want to be held accountable for that. Like more often than not, I will even say, like, I've been there, like, I want to do this. I will say it to a friend or something like that. And then I'll have a friend be like, so how about that thing that we talked about last month? And I'm like, oh, like it just, or I make an excuse for it. And then I'm like, oh no, like doing something differently now. And like something that I'm so grateful for about you in my life, I'll express something to you. You'll be like, okay, great. What's our next action step? What are we going to do that to make that happen? What are we going to do to get the outcome of what you want with that? Because you can sit in that, mull it over, but then what do you do with that? And so I think that people who are, and this is just my own personal opinion because I've been this person, is I will make constant change because I'm either like deflecting something else that's going on in my life, or I think that I can accomplish it. And then when I start to get into it, I'm like, oh, I can't do it. So I need to change again to do something different or to try to, address something different in my life so that we can ignore the old thing. And I don't need to follow through with that, but I have a new thing that I'll follow through with. But then that creates a new pattern where it's like you get so comfortable of giving half effort.
Yeah.
And that's
not good at all. Like that's, you're needing to execute that follow through. And, you said earlier is like that awareness, like you're wanting for that, when you were talking about just habits of breaking this like behavior of self-sabotage, you're like awareness, which I think awareness is key in almost everything, right? Yeah. Well, everything. But you were saying that, and it's like, now that you know, like, how are you going to execute that follow through? Because I believe in accountability. Absolutely. Totally, fully believe in accountability. How are you like going to do that? What do you think you've learned from that, like processing that?
Like processing accountability?
Well, no, just processing like, hey, I know I figured out that I'm now aware, right? That like, I don't execute follow through.
Yeah. It's finding a partner. It's finding somebody to come alongside you in that. I'm super grateful that I have people that I'm able to very vulnerably come to and be like, I just can't do this by myself.
Wow. So important.
It is. It's so important. And it's not everybody has that, but I think that you can have that. You can, if you're able to really, because for me, it was a lot of humbling myself. Like I used to be so big headed of like, I can figure this out. I can problem solve on my own and do these things. But ultimately, like I got to the point where I was like, I don't have all the resources or I don't have the wisdom to be able to walk through this by myself. Who in my life is somebody that either I know has been through this or I trust enough to be like, you're about to see all my dirty laundry, but I need to go through this with somebody and I need help here.
And that's so mature and smart, because I think a lot of this age is like, this is my business, this is my personal life, don't, which I totally believe there's a level of like, what's in this house, what goes in this house, stays in this house, right? But not to an extent of like life threatening. And when we look at like mental issues, and this can be like a mental like hurdle, right?
Yeah.
Those things need to be, like you said, finding somebody you trust, and being able to be held accountable and walk with them. Because like we're talking about, it's really like walking out that action after you say, okay, I want to do it. Because every year, January 1st, what do, guys? We say, new year, new me. I am so tired of that, first of all. Second of all, we like feel like we have to wait to the beginning of the year to change something. No, change something December 7th, change something August 8th, right? Yeah. You can do it, but it's the idea that we get so caught up in like the new change that we want to make. And it's amazing to have that motivation. It's amazing to have that goal, but it's nothing without the follow through. Right. You know what I mean? Like I read a post where like somebody was like, the gym is full, the first month of the year. So January, but then like it starts to empty right back out. You know what I mean? In the spring. And it's true. Like we get so caught up in the idea of, I want to do it. But then where's the follow through? We have to walk in that action. And so, I think Jasmine has some great advice. Find someone that holds you accountable, because although you have good intentions for yourself, to work out and I'm using that example because it's the safest one. We all have different goals. So cut and paste as you see fit, guys. Yeah. But, having that goal is not enough. Walking through it, because having the goal is glamorous, but then you're like, oh, you're literally attacking yourself, or you're not rooting for yourself by not completing that goal. Right.
I mean, the idea is always good in our head.
Always. It sounds amazing.
It sounds amazing. But even like, I'll use an example, like when you start a business, you might just be the idea person. You might not be the execution person.
Right. Accept that.
Yes. And be okay with that. But also like, you have the means of partnering with the person who makes the finances happening, partnering with the person to bring the idea to life, to bring the creative aspect for it, partnering with the person who's well networked in the industry that you want to be in. Like, it's okay to be able to humble yourself and not be like, I can solve it all on our own. And I mean, I'll speak for my age. I feel like I know so many people who really believe that they could do it on their own. And it breaks my heart.
Oh, that's hard.
It is so hard because it's like, it doesn't matter in my experience, sometimes it doesn't matter how much life you can speak into people, like until they're ready to get out of their own rut, it's entirely up to them. And you can either support that and just be like, I'm going to be side by side with you on this journey until you're ready, for us to cross paths, or, just politely be like, hey, I'm going to set this down. And when you're ready, let me know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good right there. I kind of want to backtrack, and forgive me for not asking this before, but earlier we were talking about like what is it that makes us afraid of like our fullness, like our full self. So like the best self in that season, right? And it makes me think like, so what do you think was the moment or time in your life that made you feel like you could not be that self? So like, was it your childhood where you were like, this is just not going to work, my dreams are, you know what I mean? Like, I like to think of it like right now, my daughter has like 3 professions under her belt in her mind, right?
Right.
Cool. How can I support you, sis?
Yeah.
I could very well say, no, you can only do one. And I could say that to her, and that could very well make a mark in her life. That's like, wait, I have to choose. You know what I mean? Who knows what she can do? You know what I mean? Who knows what it'll look like? And so I could very well be creating the moment that tells her, you cannot be your full self. There, she continues to self-sabotage because my mom told me, right? Because she's an adult and she knows better, and because that's how kids think, right? And it's not always true, but she's an adult and she said that this is what I cannot do. So when the opportunity comes for Gloria to have a dual major, for her to take up 2 different professions, and she very well could she be telling herself, well, I can't, I can only choose one. Yeah. So do you feel like you have that moment? Like, do you feel like you've experienced that?
Yeah. When I shared a little bit about this in our last episode, Hey Dad, if you guys haven't had the opportunity to listen, definitely go listen. It was a great episode. It was a great conversation. I felt, but one moment for me was when I was fed up of having a victim mentality. That was something that I had shared of, it felt like the world was against me, and so that was a very like pivoting moment in my life. And that was more of like the general sense of like, I just want something that's different for my life than what I've seen, up until I think I was like a junior in high school. That was a pretty pivotal moment for me. But then, as I got into college, I started thinking about my life more in the long term rather than the short term, anymore. So I started thinking about my career, what I was going to, do with my career, who I wanted, to be in the career field. I started thinking about like, I want a husband one day, I want a family one day. And so as those thoughts started, coming into my mind, I was like, how do I position myself in these places? But so my career came first, or it comes first as of right now. And when I was in college, I had a mentor, Dr. Pravaznik, the best guy. And he saw how much self-doubt I had in me.
Wow.
Like, to the point.
It's an instructor of yours.
It was an instructor. He did not know me personally whatsoever. I just had class with him all the time. I ended up working for him in the College of Business, which was incredible. And he gave me so many amazing opportunities. And there was one day, him and I sat down, and he was like, I no longer want to believe in you more than you believe in yourself.
Whoa. Whoa.
And my jaw was to the ground.
Whoa. So, like, I feel like I just got dumped, first of all. That, like, I no longer want to believe in you more than you believe in yourself. Accountability at its best. I will not be your biggest fan if you cannot be. What?
Yeah. And I was in college. I still felt like a kid. And I was like, what in the world? I left that office with my jaw to the ground, not knowing what the heck to say. Right. Like, I don't want to come back to work tomorrow.
I'm going to stay home.
I'm just going to like mental health day, right?
Wow.
But it was so incredible because I was like, it was an intro to business type position, and I was helping, create mentors for this. And he was starting an entrepreneurship program. And I was like, Bill, nah, that's not me. That is not my journey whatsoever. Like, I'll support you, what you need. I got you. But he was like, no. I will no longer believe in you more than you believe in me. And so
believe in yourself, yeah.
Yeah, like believe in myself. And so he gave me that push to be like, you have to believe that you're deserving of these things. You have to believe that this is meant for you. You have to have the confidence in yourself that you can walk all of these things out. Just because your story looks so different from others around you does not mean that you're less deserving.
Right.
And so mind you, I did not accept that in the moment. After I left that office, I wasn't like, yeah, I'm a new woman. Absolutely not.
I'm going to go cry in my car. Thanks, bye.
Right. Like, I'm going to go mull it over for the next 2 months. Right. But, he spoke that into me in college. And so when I got out of college and I was, getting into internships and getting into career positions, like one of my internships actually turned into a full-time job. Because I believed in myself. I believed during my internship, when you get paid nothing and you get the grunt work, I believed that I deserved the actual position in that company. I believed that this was meant for me. I was meant to be in this position, and I was meant to get to this place.
Wow.
Because I had put in the work, and it takes time, to get to that place. But even like, as I think even further ahead, like I'm positioning myself in my life right now to believe I deserve this. I'm working hard for this. I'm stewarding it very well so that when the next part of my life comes, I'm prepared for that. I don't want to self-sabotage it, right? I don't want to be like, because now being so fully into my career, I've fallen back to the mindset of like, I'm an independent woman who's really career oriented and I want nothing else in my life but this, and shutting out all the things. Like, I don't want to just have blinders on that so much, but it's knowing that like I deserve those things just because they're not in my life right now, but I deserve it. Yeah. That was a little bit long-winded.
No, that was so good. First of all, you rocked me with it. I'm going to write that down somewhere. Your professor, like, I feel like he knocked both of us out, and I'm offended. But you made some really great points. And, even just to the last thing you said, you are preparing yourself. And even though, just to revert back to a comment before, earlier in the podcast, even though we look different each stage of our life in like the fullness of ourselves or the best of ourselves, even though we look different, we are putting in that work. So just like you said, I'm doing work now so that later I know that I deserve it.
Yeah.
I was doing things before that I didn't know was preparing me for now. I had no idea that I would be starting my own business, doing like literally like I would have kids. I would have a husband. I was supposed to be somewhere and running somebody's office. I was supposed to be in my mind, right? And so you're right. You can appreciate and you can step into that and affirm that for yourself, knowing, no. Because 5 years ago, when my husband was active duty and I was with my kids all the time and he was on the ship and he, you know what I mean? I was putting in the work so that we can now have a better family life. And we were, you know what I mean? And you can accept that. That was my personal rant, guys.
No, that's so good. What was your moment?
Man. It was in college. A lot happened in college, man. I was actually struggling and I succeeded in my struggle, if that makes sense. So like I spoke before and you'll probably hear me say it a million times. College was a very busy season for me and I was not, I would say financially stable. And I was literally like broke college student, right? Yeah. Working graveyard at a group home and then working as an athletic trainer during the day at the school and organizations and then class. And I remember like there was we used to have this gospel choir and somebody had like said to me like, man, like this is great. Like they were really loving just the shows and things that we would do. Attached to that gospel choir, we had a Bible study. And the Bible study would pretty much serve the campus students who were like abroad, right? So couldn't go home for church, didn't live locally, couldn't go to their home church and had no connection spiritually. So we would like rent out the event center, right? And then our gospel choir would come sing. And then we would like recruit the nearest like youth pastor. Yeah. And it was like every Tuesday night, right? Oh my God. And so we would have this service, sing some songs, have a service and like have food and we would just enjoy each other. And so there were students that were coming up to me and they were like, thank you for this. Like me and my team, thank you for this. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm literally a year younger than you are. I'm younger than you are. I'm like just a year older than you. Yeah. And I saw myself doing something big, knowing I was going to go sleep in my car later that night. Right. Or like, I haven't slept in 3 days. And I was like, if I am this effective at such a stripping time, you know what I mean, in my life, you can't tell me anything, right? Yeah. Because even the one or two students that were like, this helped me so much. I miss home and I haven't been to church and we weren't delivering the word like, old school. It was just being able to come to the level of students and communicate and like worship together, right? But that, I was like, oh my God, for that moment, I'm doing something and you have no idea what I'm going to go back to, right? Yeah. And it paired that with like, my dad had this conversation with me. Yikes. I was a teenager and he kind of told me something to the effect of, no isn't a new word. He was like, no isn't new. There's nothing to be afraid of about no. Yeah. And I took that and I remember every time I went to a job interview or every time I went for a presentation, every time I did something, I said, wouldn't be the first time I heard no, and it won't be the last. Like no is going to stop me from going, right? And, I know people have other sayings like, there's, with every no, there's like a few yeses. I don't care if I heard 10 million no's in a row. Like it doesn't affect me. My dad was like, no isn't a new word. It's not.
What do you good advice?
You know what I mean? Like you think they just invented that to hurt your feelings? Right.
You know what I mean? You think this is a personal attack against you?
Right.
You thought?
What do you mean? That's been around for ages. But it was just the idea that pair this like kind of like small testimony of affecting someone's life where I feel like it was a really hard time in my life. And then my dad like, this, keep going. I had to like couple that and say, okay, all right, Shon, what next? What next? Because before that, like, we're talking about, just that time in your life where you felt you had to have that change, that switch. a lot of that happened in college. You know, you're forced to be an adult. You can't always go back home and like, right? No, don't get me wrong. There were times like I went back home and like my mom cooks very, very well. And so I could like, hey mom, you know what I mean? But you can't do that all the time, right? You know, so it was just, it was really, really enlightening. And I still carry like those moments to this day.
That's powerful. I think there's so much power in being able to face the fight of you against you. In the way of like, we're not fighting against each other necessarily. We're fighting for each other.
Yeah.
I'm fighting for you. I'm fighting for the woman that you want to become. I'm fighting, you know, for what the life that you want or whatever that is. Like, there's so much power in that.
It makes me think like, so what does it look like for the other person? So the other person in your life, we're talking about accountability, right? And we're talking about like the way we see ourselves. On one hand, you know, that partner that you're like, you know, you're allowing to hold you accountable and be vulnerable with. How do you think they feel like seeing you break yourself down? That must be hurtful. And for me, it's like my husband, you know, he's seen me like come up with so many things and then not do it. And he's like, why didn't you do this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like my husband jokes, like, he's like, I think you're going to make us rich one day. And I'm like, you have so much faith in me. I don't know.
He fights for you hard.
Fights for me. And he's like, but then he like tells me like, you have so many like great things, like opportunities. And I will meet somebody and like end up doing a project. I'll meet somebody at the mall, end up doing a project and just sewing into their life. And he's like, oh my God, how do you do this? Like you magnet, it's like a magnet, right? And so I imagine somebody that literally believes so much in me, that must be hurtful when you see me break myself down. You know, he saw me 2 kids in 2 years and like be the best in the best athletic shape of my life. You know, we were so involved in church, work, doing crazy, like awesome things, right? Projects in our life. And he's like, what?
Who is she? What? Superwoman? I'm confused.
Right. And then to see me beat myself down. It's like, he can't compete with me. His motivation can't compete with me. And that's scary because I sometimes don't stop and think about, what am I doing to my loved one? What am I doing to the guy that is like literally my best friend, right?
Yeah.
What am I doing to my small roommates who are like, you know, tripping out? Like, why are you, you know, I sent you a video. So last night, my daughter comes to me in the middle of the night and she's like, are you bored? And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, or are you sad? And I was like, I don't know where you're going with this. And so I said, well, why do you ask? She said, I just feel like you're having a hard time today. My 6-year-old. And I was like, what?
That girl really pierces your heart.
She said, I just feel like, Mommy, I just feel like you're having a hard time today. And I said, why do you say that? She said, like, you're not smiling, like, you know, and oh my God, like, you know what I mean? Like,
that's heavy.
And I had to tell her, and at first she thought she was in trouble because my face dropped. And it was pretty much out of like, wow, my child is noticing my frustrations, my mood, right? That's a huge deal because I got to be super careful about how I am around them. But my face dropped and she said, oh my God, am I in trouble? And I said, no, not at all. Thank you for noticing that. And I said, I'm so sorry, but thank you for noticing that. I am just so appreciative that you are concerned about my mood. And what that like told me is like, man, like my kids are hurt if I'm hurt.
Yeah.
So if they see me do a certain thing, they could either mimic it and do it to themselves, or they can look like, why would she say that? You know, why would she do that to herself?
Yeah.
To herself. And I wonder, like, what do you think about that? The people that are in our lives that are seeing us self-sabotage, that are seeing us break ourselves down, how hurtful must that feel?
My like heart is out of my body right now.
How do you think I felt?
Yeah, when you sent me that video, I was asleep, but I watched it this morning and I was like, okay. Okay. The end of the video is the best, but we don't got to talk about that. But, I think that because you're one of my accountability people, and I know that you will carry weight with me. Mm-hmm. And like we had a conversation recently about, something that's been going on in our lives, and I brought to you a hurt that I felt, and then I could feel your response as well. And in a moment, I was like, I don't want you to have to carry this. But then my second thought was, I'm so grateful she carries this with me. Mm. And I think that the example that you gave with your daughter is that she affirms you, your husband affirms you, we get affirmed by our people in our lives, like how great we are, or, what they see in us, or, whatever the situation may be. And I think to help that is sometimes like you affirmed your daughter of like, thank you for seeing me in this, and I think that's a way that I don't even think that it needs to be fixed, but I think it's like affirming that person it's a different way of affirmation, right? Of like, thank you for seeing me. Thank you for making me feel seen. Or even like, thank you for carrying this with me, and knowing that it's not my intention for it to hurt you, but it's so, whatever it may be, like it's so heavy that I just can't do this on my own. And I think for me, it's taken a lot for me to get to the point in my life where I share some really hard and some really personal things. But I think through that process of what I've like settled in my heart and really accepted is that there are people who hate to see you hurt, but they want to carry that with you. Wow. They don't want to be shut out. No. They don't want to be neglected. They don't want to be projected on. They want to come alongside you. Yeah. And so it goes and that's what accountability is about. There's so many aspects of like kind of what goes into accountability, but I think that's a really big one, because it's like when you get to that really deep, deep, deep well of whatever you're going through, or a hurt or a frustration, or even something that you're trying to accomplish, like you got to really accept like that person who what's the word? We made a contract. It's like, that's part of the contract. Yeah, that's the deal, bro. Like we're going, like if you were like, hey, I want you to be this with me, like y'all better be on the same page of like what's happening here. Cause like, I know for you and you'd be like, Jazz, don't give me that fake stuff. Yeah. Bring it all to me. You're wasting my time. Exactly. So I think like, all of that to say, it's just like being grateful that somebody is willing to carry that with you, and they want to. Yeah. Yeah. So good stuff. You, and you also said like, it doesn't need to change, meaning, and this is what I got. When we start to correct that behavior of like, thank you for noticing, or let me say, I appreciate you being present. I want to pair that with just the idea of self-sabotage is not going to be fixed in a day. And the idea that we love the idea of affirmation. And that's exactly Jasmine's point, is that is so key, when we come alongside one another. And it's like, just like the comment I told you in like the other episode where my friend is like, don't talk about my friend like that. Right. Like me to me. And she's like, right. So when I think about that, I'm like, wouldn't it be awesome if we were okay with that correction of, hey, I see you hurting, but it's hurting me that you're hurting yourself. And I don't like that. How can I help you be better at this? Because although I know you're going through something, I hate to see you be your worst enemy. Like normalize those conversations and hold them, like you said, accountable. Continue to have those conversations, because eventually you will say, you know what? I'm not just hurting myself. I'm hurting those around me. And it's not to make it about everybody else. Yeah. It's to say your loved ones don't want to see you not love yourself. Yeah. And that looks a lot of different ways. You know what I mean? I've seen like my family, my uncle tells me all the time, he's like, your potential is like out of this world. And I'm like, I could very well just be like, no, I'm just chilling right now. Right. You know what I mean? No, we kicking it. But he's like,
he is so impressed with me. And sometimes I'm like, why? Why are you so obsessed with me? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, but like he speaks so much life into me, and he has a passion for it. And I know that whatever, I don't care if I came out with a new sponge, like he would support it like 100%, because that's how much he believes in me. So I could imagine if my mode switched and I went into this like, you know, state of just beating myself down, he'd be like, are you kidding me?
Right.
Right. You know, so normalizing those conversations of, no, you're better than this. And I would hate to see this go. I've seen you do A, B, and C, you know, and me personally to you, you know, Jasmine, I've said to you, I watched you self-sabotage yourself. I watched you do that. Why did you say yes? Why? You don't need to be responsible for this. You don't need to bring this or put this on your task list today. You would have been very fine, you know? And although I know you're such a good person and I know you're such a giving person, you want to be a team member. You want to make sure the plan comes into place. Right. You want to like collectively, right? I know you. I'm the same way, but not at the risk, right, of you losing a part of you. Yeah. Right?
Literally just happened yesterday. I sat in my car mad as hell. Excuse my language, but that was mad. But no, but that is real. And so we're not trying to say like it doesn't happen and it doesn't change overnight, but it's an ongoing thing.
And just normalize those conversations.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes people will have solutions for you that you can't see for yourself.
Boom. They're able to see it differently.
Yep. Yeah.
You're good for that. Like we'll like lay it out and it's like, okay, if you turn it around this way and you see it. I have a last thought, and it's something that I can like personally agree with. And you guys, you know, leave in the comments, DM us and let us know how you feel about this. But I read something that said, sometimes we'll make time for me time, right? And we'll say, I deserve a day off. And then when it comes time to take that day off, we'll replace that time with another chore because we feel like we don't deserve that day off. And so you're going through the effort of, I need to go get a massage, or I need to go get, and as a mom guilt is real. Okay. Mom guilt is also self-sabotaging. As a mom, you'll say, when the baby sleeps, I'll sleep. When the baby sleeps, I need to sleep. I'm sleep deprived. Baby sleeps, might sleep for a good 2 hours. And what do? Oh, but I have to go clean and I have to go prepare this and I have to go this, because in your mind, sleeping, like, it's like, I'm not getting anything done. It means that nothing is progressing. In all actuality, you're hurting yourself. Yeah. Right? So when it comes to, you know, I know we're talking about self-sabotage in all kind of areas, but we also just got off of talking about mental health. So be intentional about executing that day off. Yeah. That nap, that time away. Even if it's, you know what, my lunch break is 30 minutes, but I'm going to take 15 minutes to walk outside around the building, right? To myself, or go sit in my car and sing Mary J. Blige at the top of my lungs, right? Yeah. Do that, right? What, do you have any feedback on that?
Yeah. Just coming off of that, I saw a thing on Instagram, I think recently, that was like, a busy schedule is not a flex.
No.
And I was like,
that sounds horrible.
Finally, somebody said it. Like, why did we think that was a big thing? Like, that time is so necessary. Like, just because something is taken out doesn't mean that we always have to put something in, you know? And I think just in life, we do that more often than not. And then we kick ourselves in the foot after the fact, and then we're mad about it. And it then just creates that same self-sabotage cycle. So it's like really taking that time to, if I want this cycle to stop, I have to be the person to cut it off. Yeah. And pivot and change. And, or if you're going to take out something, deposit it with something that is beneficial.
Yes. Yes. That's an intentional move, and also a habit that we can do to, like, you know, stop those behaviors like we were talking about earlier, right? because they're behaviors. Behaviors can be changed.
Yes.
Behaviors can be improved. Okay. So when we talk about self-sabotage being a behavior, you guys, you know, when we were kids, we used to eat stuff off the floor. That was a behavior.
Honestly.
Are we still doing it? I'm not talking about the 5-second rule for those of you who are asking, but those are behaviors, right? We've improved, we've matured.
Yeah.
So think of it as such. And when we can better execute changing those or saying this behavior doesn't really, in your words, it doesn't serve happiness in my life. Is that how you say it? It doesn't, what does it serve?
It doesn't serve me.
It doesn't serve me.
Yes.
Right? Those behaviors don't serve the best Jasmine, the best Shon, the fullest Jasmine, the fullest Shon. They don't.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. And, you know, allow yourself to go as far as you want to go.
Yeah.
Give yourself that permission. Give yourself that freedom. Like, you can have that if you want it. But, you know, we're so grateful that you guys made it this far.
Yeah.
You know, I'm hopeful that this has stirred a thought in your mind of like, what are behaviors in, you know, my life that maybe I want to change, maybe I want to correct, or to even, who are those people that help hold me accountable? Like, I think out of this conversation, like, we really want to just stir a thought. Yeah. You know, we said it earlier, it looks different for both of us. Both of our definitions look differently. But at the end of the day, I think what we agreed on is it's you versus you. Yep. Nobody else. But then it impacts your surroundings as well. You know, you are a person of impact. I don't care who you think you are. Like, you are, whatever circle of influence you impact that circle. So we're grateful that you guys are here. We want to hear from you. Send us a DM, give us a comment, whatever that looks like. Send us a text. I'm just kidding. Not everybody has our number. But we're glad that you guys are here, and we'll see you guys soon.
We'll see you guys. Thanks for having us.